know about. If your Tawheed understanding is incorrect, every single one of your practices will be incorrect. So you really need to understand. If you want to read books on a subject matter that is the most important to you, read about Tawheed. Read everything you can about Tawheed. Understand the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That absolutely no created thing in this world that Allah created shares the majesty of the one who created it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Al-Wahid and Al-Ahad are these two names. Now, interestingly enough, as you are studying this, you will find that some scholars will include Al-Wahid as the 67th name of Allah, and they will not put as the 68th name Al-Ahad. This just varies from books, classic books I've read. I noticed this. And so we will sort of examine both today, and I believe, I deem by Allah, it will take 2 classes to cover this. So after this week, and next week, if it takes next week to finish it, we will begin to have more palatable and easier understandings, and we will do something like this, like I said, once a month. So as you can see on the board here, Al-Wahid, the one. And so perhaps it might be interesting or beneficial to look at the fact that what makes us different from Christians is our belief that Allah is the one, and that Jesus Christ and no one else that was ever created can be equal to or have any kind of partnership with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one, the creator of diversity from unity, the manifestation of unity, the one unique starting point from which all else has arisen. So every one of us had a starting point. And some would say it was when the sperm hit the egg. Some would say that it was when we exited our mother's womb. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have this. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me from erring, because when we are talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to be very, very careful. Anything that we would say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be compared to what we understand. It is only a tool for us to get a glimpse, a drop in the ocean of understanding about our Lord, our Creator. The one source from which all of creation springs forth. Every species, every virus, every bacteria, everything with life began with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one whose unity includes all that appears as diverse, separate, or individual. So on some very deep spiritual level, we talk about individuality, particularly in this society. In most of the Muslim societies, actually all of them, according to Quran and Sunnah, we have a collective approach. So when you get married, it's not about, it's my life and I can do what I want to. No, you're bringing someone into the family. We even have fardal kafaya. We have collective deeds. So we are very focused on the ummah, the community, the greater good. So this misconception, this delusion about individuality, you are never alone. You are really not an individual. You are part of a larger system. And that began with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the root waw, ha, dal, which has the following classical Arabic connotations. To be one, to be made one, to be called one, to connect, join, unite, to be unique, singular, to be one part of others. And this name is used in the Holy Quran in 21 verses, but 27 times. So I would encourage you to take a picture of this slide, if you like, with your iPhone, Android, smartphone, flip phones, whatever kind of phone you have, for your future learning, and read all of these verses. As you will see in Surah Al-Baqarah, in each of those verses it's twice. Allah had a son, and that he deemed that his son be crucified. And we know that Allah did not have to have a human being crucified in order to do whatever Allah wants. Allah just says, be, and it is. In another translation of this verse that I thought was very beautiful, had it been Allah's will to have offspring, Allah could have chosen whatever Allah willed of Allah's creation. Glory be to Allah. Allah is Allah, the One, the Supreme. The ancient root of Ahad point toward to the essential qualities which describe unity, while the ancient roots of Wahid point toward the manifestations which arise from that unity. And I want you, and I know this will be a little bit of a challenge to us intellectually, but just stay with it and Allah will give it to you. When you look at the beautiful things that the scholars say about the One, and what an honor it is to know the One, what an honor it is to be the servant of the One, and what a disservice it is to the creation of humanity when they are deluded to believe that anything is equal to that One that gave you breath and that keeps your blood pressure normal and keeps your heart beating. That which is Ahad cannot be divided into parts or any parts distinguished. For example, as a human being, I can lose my arm. It can go away from me. It's no longer united with me. I can lose a leg. And I will no longer be one, yet I'm separated from a part of myself, but someone will still say he's one human being. No comparison to the ideology and understanding, the deep understanding of Allah is one. This is why it is so dangerous when we talk about Allah to try to compare it to us, to we as humans. And then, of course, I always like to take you to the most classic and the most difficult text, which is Masa'wis, the great names of Allah. One of the classical books written on the subject. Linguistically, Al-Wahid, the one who does not socialize with people nor keeps them company. An animal will keep you company. What is the saying? A dog is a man's best friend, maybe a lady's best friend. A cat is my wife's best friend besides me. So we have this one, our Lord, our Creator, our Sustainer. We communicate with Allah through prayer. And just to reiterate my speech about not referring to Allah as him or her, I also like to demonstrate the equality of gender in this religion. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Islam was the first religion to acknowledge this in women. In the Judaic law, if a woman burnt the toast, her husband could throw her out. This is true. To believe in Tawheed is to believe that there is no partner at all with Allah in Allah's authority, and that being one is one of Allah's qualities which Allah has taken solely, and no created thing, nobody else shares this with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to Ibn al-Athir's An-Nihaya, Al-Wahid is that one who alone is always there, and none is with the divine. According to tradition, Allah Almighty did not accept anyone besides himself to be unified. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to be alone in his majesty. or Her Majesty. According to lexicons, Al-Wahid also means the one who is most knowledgeable, most powerful. So we know that Allah is the all-knowing, the all-majestic, the all-powerful. And nothing that is created is ever all. Who and who alone is unique without anyone else like divinity. Only Allah, God, is like that. The one and only God. There is no plural form of this word at all. So when we look at Christianity and they tell you that Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit are all one, then you have to think for a minute and say, well, that's strange, because God is spirit, Jesus was man, God cannot be tempted, all humans are tempted, and there's a whole plethora of things, if you ponder and reflect on it, that it simply doesn't even make logic. Never mind 1 equals 3. Tawheed means recognition of the unity of the one who alone manages the affairs of servants. So none creates, nor sustains, nor grants, nor withholds, nor brings back to life, nor causes death, nor manages the affairs of the kingdom outwardly or inwardly except Allah, the one creator. You can see the all-encompassing nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that no human and no created thing could ever share. Even if you look at cloning, for example, no one could clone unless they're using what the Creator already gave them. So that's not creation. To create is to start with nothing. When an artist expresses themselves, we often say, oh, how creative. Actually, that's not correct. I would think the better word would be how expressive. You have expressed yourself with all that Allah has given you. Only Allah can create. Whatever Allah wills comes to be, and whatever Allah does not will, never will. Sometimes we will to buy a church, and our will doesn't work. If Allah willed for us to have that church, we would be celebrating today Allah's gift to us. Not even an atom moves without Allah's knowledge. Nothing takes place without Allah's will. Not a leaf falls down without Allah's knowledge. Nothing escapes Allah's knowledge, not even as much as the weight of an atom in the heavens or the earth, nor smaller than, nor bigger. In the Bible it says that Allah knows the number of hairs on your head. That is a major calculation, because every day when I comb my hair, I'm losing hair. I wake up in the morning and there's hair on my pillow. If someone here was given the job to keep up with somebody's hairs, you would probably end up insane. You would actually end up in a mental institution. Imagine, just take 1 square inch of your head and try to count the hairs. Yeah. Okay, the man's got jokes. Allah's knowledge encompasses everything. Allah's might overwhelms everything. Allah's will is affected regarding everything. Allah's wisdom rules everything. And when you really look at the inner dimension of this, if you are really connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this level, you will never question anything that happens in your life. Because you will say, the all-knowing, the all-wise is aware of what has come to me, and there is benefit in that. Tawheed then means that whatever comes to your mind of how Allah may be, or how much, or what Allah is, or anything which you think is appropriate for Allah, Allah is contrary and above that. Glory to Allah. If we think about the all-knowing and we think how limited we are in capacity of learning, what I find is that when I meet with a lot of very brilliant people that have multiple PhDs, they are very humble people because they realize how much they don't know. And the older I get and the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know and what little knowledge I have about so many things. The figure 1 may be used to negate multiplicity or the existence of an opposite or a contrast. Some scholars have interpreted the first case as follows. The first viewpoint is that it is indivisible. We say one thing in order to negate talking about naught. For what does not exist cannot be counted or divided. Try to divide nothing. By indivisible, we do not mean, say, one single man or one entity, for such can surely be divided. But the real one is truly and absolutely indivisible. As I said earlier, I can be divided. Somebody can take my arm. Somebody can take my leg. I can even be divided in my thought. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indivisible. Sometimes a human being will say, I'm torn. I'm not sure what I believe. I'm not sure what I think about this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never torn in that way. Indivisible. And so when you hear the Pledge of Allegiance, the word indivisible is incorrect. Because of course the United States is divisible. It's divisible even by political party. It's divisible by thought. It's divisible by state. It's divisible by county. It's divisible by city. So don't believe that there's any nation that isn't divided in some way, shape, or form. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not divided. Abu Ishaq has said that one is something without adding that it is indivisible. For what accepts to be divided is, in fact, at least two, not one. So I've got to have two to divide. 2 divided by 1 is 2. I cannot divide 1. Oh, I could do fractions, but then I don't have a whole, do I? And it's these kind of intricacies that help us to understand the uniqueness and the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second viewpoint is expressed by some scholars who say that one is what cannot be added thereto, nor removed therefrom. It is the opposite of saying one person, for you can say that one person is without a hand or a leg, so something can be removed from him or her. The third viewpoint is espoused by some other scholars who say that one is what cannot be regarded as a figure, for a figure is the average of 2 other figures, and the smallest figure is 2, with 1 and 3 as being both ends thereof. 1, 2, 3. One of the early things that children learn. 1, 2, 3. The outcome is 2. As for 1, it does not have an average. Therefore, it is not a figure. The essence of the one individual, according to such an outlook, is a true one. Suppose some may say that one, according to this viewpoint, gives the impression that it is the least of the little, as is the case with one individual, and as such it gives the impression that it is the smallest, the least, the most insignificant, something which is impossible to apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You see, when we go about saying, I want $1, and we are thirsty, it's not insignificant. But it's impossible to apply insignificance to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To this viewpoint, we can say that the individual who is described as limited in size or number is one whose entity can be affected. He or she can be honored, and hence he or she can increase his or her offspring. And without such honoring, he or she is small and insignificant. If others affect him or her and are linked to him or her, then the group they would form would be called many. So we have many people in this classroom today. We are a group. This proves that the essence of the individual is insignificant when such a viewpoint is adopted. And this outlook is impossible to apply to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, it is out of the question to refer to Allah as being small or few. If you have $2 in your pocket, you'll say, I have a few bucks. You never think of Allah as few. Allah is all, everything. Those who deny that Allah should have adjectives claim that anyone who proves that Allah can be described with adjectives does not recognize Allah's unity. For if we attribute many adjectives to Allah, Allah would become the total outcome of Allah's essence plus those adjectives, a compound of many elements, and hence subject to both the raising and lowering, such as you may say that Allah is mighty but not knowing. They also claim that one who proves Allah's having, say, 8 great names would be believing in the 9th or of 9 items, where Allah has clearly said in Surah Al-Ma'idah, Surah 5 and verse 72, certainly they have disbelieved who say Allah is Christ, the son of Mary, or Miriam. While Christ himself said, O children of Israel, worship Allah, my Rabb and your Rabb. Whoever commits shirk, joins partners with Allah, Allah will deny him or her the paradise, and the hellfire will become his or her home. There will be no helper for the wrongdoer, and the wrongdoer here is the one who makes partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why it is so important for us to make da'wah. Because if you really love for your brother what you love for yourself, and we know that that is not only referring to Muslims, if you love for your earth sister what you love for yourself, sisters, would you want them to go to hell? And there is authentic ahadith that says on the day of judgment, our neighbors that we did not invite to Islam, and may Allah help us all, will be hanging around our necks screaming, why did you not tell me about Islam? We are called to be the vicegerents. We are to represent and maintain what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in its perfection in this earth. And as I'm saying that, I will ask you, please, always use a china cup. Don't use the paper, because you are taking the trees from the creation. I know that's not your intention. But I would encourage you and ask you, please, we have the china cups here because we're trying to be green. We're trying to be responsible for the sake of Allah. And no condemnation, no castigation, no criticism to those who have paper cups. I love you more than I can express with words for the sake of Allah. So since one who says that Allah is one of three, according to this verse, enters into kufr, enters into disbelief, so will one who says that Allah is thrice that many. God is omniscient, all-knowing, infinite awareness. No created being has ever been that, nor will they ever be that. Sometimes people say, oh, but he or she is a know-it-all. No, they're not. There's no such thing. They might think it, but they're not that. God cannot be tempted. All humans are tempted. God's will is different to humans' will. God is spirit and humans are flesh. Prophets who received divine revelation accepted God's doctrine, which didn't originate in their mind. God has no end. All created things have an end. And when I was 15 years of age at Lee Bible College, I wrote a thesis entitled, Jesus Christ is not God. And these are the premises that I used. Anyone who confirms one entity plus 8 of its attributes will be confirming all 9 of them. For just 3 times 3, and certainly we can see the confusion such an assumption causes. As regarding the one, according to the second viewpoint, the proponents say that it means there is none in existence that equals Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the necessity of Allah being who Allah is, and in knowing all things which have no end. Those who reject the concept of attributing attributes to the Almighty allege that Allah is one in the sense that there is nothing at all in existence equal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and as far as time and perpetuity are concerned. Those who confirm Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's great names have proven that there have been many things in existence since time immemorial. As regarding Al-Ahad, Al-Zajjaj says that linguistically its origin and derivation is Al-Wahid. So does Al-Azhari, who says the waw in Al-Wahid was altered to Hamza, hence Al-Ahad. There are other ways to look at the differences between Al-Wahid and Al-Ahad. The first is that Al-Wahid is a noun whereby a calculation of figures is initiated. So one may start counting by saying Wahid, Ithnain, Thalatha, etc. And for those of you who don't know, that's 1, 2, 3, etc. in Arabic. The second is that when negation is applied, Ahad is more often used than Wahid. One may say, Ma fi dar ahad. That is, there is nobody inside the house. It would be erroneous, to use the word Wahid in such a case. And here is where I begin to dissect the very subtle differences between this name. And it is truly perplexing. It is truly a matter of tafakkur and tadabbur. And I encourage you to do that. It is so important. It is so important to understand Tawheed. And it makes me very sad because oftentimes someone embraces Islam and before they can pray, they come to me and say, Imam Sykes, will you do a class on the jinns? Imam Sykes, will you do a class on this? Because people want to know, they're curious about the unseen. Well, I would encourage you to be curious about this unseen. And you will be so nurtured in your soul. third is that the word Wahid can be used to describe anything one wishes to describe. For example, one may say rajulun wahid, one man, or thawbun wahid, one garment. No word can be used in affirming a singular except ahad when applied to the one and only Allah, the one and only God. Nobody says rajulun ahad, one man. It is as though the Almighty has reserved such an application only for the divine. So this is the beautiful part of the Arabic language. Something that I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will teach me in this life, and if not, He will teach me, inshallah, Allah will teach me in the grave. I look forward to continued lessons on this subject, inshallah. As regarding the case of negation, it may be applied to anyone other than Allah. One may say, Ma raytu ahadan. That is, I have not seen anyone. Al-Ahad and Al-Wahid are like Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Two great names of Allah may share one common quality. And yet there's that unique difference that's so important to know. If you were speaking Arabic and you used the wrong word, it would actually be offensive. And you would get a strange look. Allah had issues specifically and only is used, that's supposed to be used, is used. Ahad is used specifically for only the Creator. Kulhu Ahad, Allahu Samad, Lam Yalid wa Lam Yulad wa Lam Yakulluhu Kufuwan Ahad. His regarding Al-Wahid, as regarding Al-Wahid, this is 4 o'clock typing, it may be used for others. For this reason, the Almighty did not apply the definite article al in Arabic for ahad. So whenever you're counting, you don't say al-ahad, you say ahad. Allah said, and I said this before, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. That is surely, or say, Allah is one in Surah 112 Al-Ikhlas. It is due to the fact that it is used in this verse as a great name of the Almighty in particular. Therefore, it conveys the meaning of the noun which does not need a definite article. So amazing. I can be Abdul Rahman, the servant of Al-Rahman, but I can never be Al-Rahman. This would be shirk. I can be the servant of Al-Rahim, but I can never be Al-Rahim. So even in our limited understanding, the merciful means the all-encompassing mercy that we cannot even really truly contemplate. There is another viewpoint. Some say that huwa is a subject, the predicate of which is ahad. Therefore, this verse has 2 predicates. One of them is Allah, and the other is ahad. The purpose behind mentioning ahad without a definite article is to remind us and draw our attention to the perfection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's unity. Of Allah being ahad, one and only one. And it is similar to the verse saying, and you will not most certainly find them to be the most greedy of men for life, found in Surah Al-Baqarah. That is, for a perfect and fulfilling life. Al-Azhari has said that Ahmed ibn Yahya had been asked whether the ashad is the plural of ahad? And his answer has been that there is no plural form of ahad. It is not improbable that ahad is the plural of wahid. Just as ashad is the plural of shaheed. The other issue is the verse saying, again, I already repeated it in Surah Al-Ikhlas. This requires a research of a higher caliber than the one provided previously. That is the subject that Allah's great names are either positive or negative. And I really struggle with this scholars calling it positive or negative. But he is a renowned scholar of great respect. And this just shows me how little I know. Something I could not come up with a full explanation for. Alhamdulillah. An example for the first category is our saying, Alimun Kadir Muridun Khalaq. That is, one who affects the divine's will and who creates out of nothing. As regarding the negative ones, it is like our saying that Allah is not a physical body, nor an essence, nor a phenomenon. Creatures first indicate that they have the first of these characteristics, that is, they are physical. Then they may fall into other categories. When we say that the word Allah connotes the most positive great names, and when we say that Ahad connotes the most significant of negative great names, our statement that Allahu Ahad is a complete statement denoting all divine attributes and the unity of all of them. It's really phenomenal. It reminds me of calculus. Somehow I feel like I need volumes of paper to work out the theorems. But yet somehow, by the grace and mercy of Allah, something so complex, Allah is speaking to your heart today. And you are getting that which you need right now of this. And inshallah, as we grow spiritually, we will get more and more understanding of this, inshallah. When we say that the word Allah implies the positive great names, it is because of the fact that Allah is the one who is worthy of being adored. And the one who is worthy of being adored is one who incessantly creates and innovates, and such an ability is not found in anyone except the one who is known to be the Almighty, the All-Knowing, who effects the divine's will in whatever the divine pleases. None of us have that kind of power. None of us have that kind of control. And this is what is meant by the insignificance of the human being. And although we are insignificant in so many respects, we were called by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We were created in the best of molds. So you see, you have to have the context. Each thing is singular, Wahid. Scholars have agreed that there are three foundations upon which Tawheed, unity of God, is based. One, the truth testifying to the divine being one. That is, the divine knowing that the divine is one. The divine knowing that the divine is one. Two, the truth unifying the divine's creation. That is, the divine's judgment. Praise be to Allah that Allah's creation is one. The creatures testifying to Allah being one. That is the knowledge and admission of the servant of Allah that his or her Lord Allah is one. And that is the first thing that we testify to. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasulullah. The second part. And by the way, last night we met a lady that has been studying Islam 40 years, and she's ready to do her shahada. Allahu Akbar. The topic of Tawheed is beyond anyone's description. For if you discuss the Almighty, there are too many views about the divine to discuss. And there are ways to discuss the divine through divine statements. So we know that as Muslims, we are not allowed to refer to Allah in any way except as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has referred to Allah or His messenger has referred to Allah. And this is how careful we have to be with our understanding of Tawheed. That we don't start describing Allah in a way that Allah did not describe Allah. Reason recognizes the divine, yet the tongue can never describe the divine. Al-Junayd was asked once about Tawheed. He said it means shattering any image. It means shatters any image. Its meaning shatters any image and confuses all branches of knowledge. While Allah remains just as Allah has always been. One. He also said the best statement to say regarding the subject of Tawheed is, glory to the one who has made no means for the divine's creatures to really know the divine except by proving to them that they can never know the divine. What a humbling statement. To say, I strive to know Allah, for I can never understand. But I want to know Allah, so I will study these attributes. I will study everything written about these attributes. I will ponder and reflect. And I will be so grateful as I learn more, just inclinations, little drops in the ocean about my Lord. And I think about how the drops in the ocean, as I was pondering and reflecting on this week, so deeply touched my soul. And I cannot fathom, I cannot imagine what it would be like to know more. Perhaps I would just cry all the time. And I mean that sincerely. Yusuf ibn al-Hussein has said, one who falls into the seas of Tawheed will day after day feel more and more thirsty. So really and truly, this is why I beg you to get into the study of Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. Get so into it that you're like a deep sea diver and you are completely immersed in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah make us to be among those people. Scholars have said that Tawheed is a prerogative of the truth, the Almighty, the Haqq. Nothing else in this world is the truth with the direct article. The only the truth, the only Haqq is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yet the divine's creatures are simply curious. Ibn Atta said among people there are those whose actions portray their belief in Tawheed. They look at everything that happens through the divine. And there are those who, when the truth is unveiled before their eyes, feel less and less concerned about anyone besides Allah. They see everyone to be as one secret within another. A phenomenon characterized by distinction. It's very interesting in the Holy Quran. It says there's no distinction among the prophets. There is no distinction among the believers. We are all equal in Islam. The only thing with distinction is Allah. And the people in this room today are fortunate to know that distinction. And that's what distinguishes you. What distinguishes you, the more that you know about Allah, the more you will be distinguished in this world. And I don't mean your ego. I mean your ruh. I mean your spirit. The Messenger of Allah and his progeny said, Allah is one and Allah loves oneness. This tradition has been explained as indicating that the divine loves the heart that is solely dedicated to the divine. Glory and exaltation are the divines. Regarding the linguistic meaning of al-Wahid, the one, scholars have said that the divine is the one who has reached the ultimate end of being honored, so none is like the divine. What time do we start?
11:30.
Okay, thank you.
What time? 11:25.
Al-Shibli said, Al-Wahid is the one who protects you, the individual against the group, a member of individuals, while the latter cannot protect you against the divine. So Allah protects each one of us in here. Allah protects us from our enemies. Allah protects us from the group internal and externally, intrinsically and extrinsically. But none of the ones in this room can protect us from the divine. None of your friends can protect you from the divine. And on that day when there is no shade but that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who you called your friends, your 1,713 friends on Facebook, will not be able to do a thing for you on Fitna Book. Al-Hussein ibn Mansur said, Al-Wahid is the one who cannot be counted. Others have said that the divine is the one who alone is the source of all knowledge, the only one who reveals what is hidden. We have been studying a lot about asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open the sadr, the outer layer of our heart, our chest. It's often referred to as our chest, but we know that it's the outer dimension of the heart. We're asking Allah to lift any barriers that stop Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Quran and Sunnah from entering into our fuad, into our qalb, into our lub, the very seed kernel of our heart. It is also said that the divine is the one whose existence has neither a duration or a limit. Nor can anyone effect a decision against the divine, nor can the divine's essence ever suffer any decrease or increase whatever. It is said that Al-Shibli was sitting one day at a merchant shop when he was asked whether he knew how to count. He answered in the affirmative, whereupon he was presented with many problems while he was telling the inquirers to put forth more, give me more, give me more. Maybe he was a great lover of math. When they finished dictating, they asked him about the total. He answered by saying, Ahad. They were astonished at his answer, so he said, has there been anything or anyone since time immemorial and for eternity except Ahad, the Samad? And you see, this is an inner knowing that goes beyond the way that most humans think. Because at this level, every answer has to do with Allah. Whatever you're asked, you will look at it in the view, in the eyes of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about it. According to one tradition, the Messenger of Allah heard a man once supplicating, saying the following, Lord, I plead to you by the very fact that you are Allah, the one and only God, the sustainer who has not begotten nor begets. nor is there anyone like the divine. So the messenger of Allah said, he surely has invoked Allah by his greatest names, whereby the divine favorably answers when the divine is asked, and the divine gives when invoked. I encourage you to invoke Allah. I encourage you to ask Allah. And interestingly enough, in closing today, this last week when I was visiting people about the property, the very wealthy man that I dealt with said, Imam Sykes, did you ask the people for money? I said, no, I never asked for money. I just pass the box around. He said, well, that's your first mistake. So I'm going to ask you for money. I've never done this. You all know this. But if we want to have a center, we cannot have a center with $100 a week. It will not happen. The only way I could see having a center would be to sell my home. And I was willing to do that. It was in writing. So I'm going to ask you, if you want this center, you can't ask Allah and do nothing. You ask Allah and then you do your part. So I'm putting the ball in your court. I'm asking you to invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our personal and spiritual growth. That we can grow to understand this infinite Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that we can so love this one, that we will sacrifice whatever it takes to fulfill this one's pleasure. And I ask you to forgive me if anything I said today was wrong, and more than likely something was wrong. And if I said anything that was correct, I give all the glory and honor to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I ask you to invoke Allah for continued help for me, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to teach me, and that He will continue, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continue to give me the strength to keep teaching. Know that I love every single one of you for the sake of Allah, and I want for you what I want for myself, and that is to be the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will have to leave the room today by 1 o'clock because there's a Bach festival here. So we will have a short discussion and we'll have to get out of here. And I want to thank Anas for donating a camera to our organization. And he doesn't like that I said that. But this camera will allow us to live stream our classes. And I ask you, because Allah said if you don't thank the people, you will not be thankful to Allah.
I can't take the credit for that. Maysoon actually.
All right, so Maysoon bought the camera. The truth is out. The camera is out of the bag. So may Allah bless you, Maysoon, and give you the best in this life and the best in the hereafter. May you be an example to us on your generosity, inshallah rabbil alameen.
Also, you want to introduce Camila?
I did. You were not in the room. Yes. Okay. So assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Since the camera is off, I did say